Hello BookTube. I need to extend a huge thank you to all my subscribers for being extremely patient with me while I was on my work-filled hiatus. Thank you very much for being understanding and knowing that as an adult one does not have full control of what goes on and how much one is required to do in a day. Anyway, this video is going to take long enough as it is because this is about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks worth of reading that I'm going to wrap up in one video. So get a cup of coffee, get some tea, get whatever you like, get comfortable, and let's begin. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin. And in my last wrap-up, which was about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, I spoke about the first one, which was The Killing Moon in this duology. This book is set 10 years after the first one, and instead of following the gatherers, we are following a healer. So we've gone from assassin to doctor, basically. And this is set in a world that vaguely resembles Egypt, from what I've understood. And as I said in this book, we follow Hanani. She is a healer. And what is interesting with her character is the fact that she is the first female healer to be allowed to exist, because it's all got to do with their magic system, which is to do with dreams, etc., and dream energy, let's put it that way. It's difficult to discuss the plot of this one because without discussing things that have happened in the previous book, but I will say that the last book ended with a war, and this is now 10 years after that war, and what's happening, who's going to win back something or not, you know, I'm not wanting to give stuff away. But this book has a bit of everything in it. It's got romance, it's got a bit of a war, there's even a plague. There is something, a contagion, that is infecting dreamers. And if you're sleeping when near somebody who has this, you will get it and you will die. So I think I've managed to make this sound rather dull, but actually this book was quite interesting. I much preferred it to the first one, although it still took a little bit of time getting to everything. The build-up was necessary for character and for understanding Hanani and how she was changing, and the people she was with, because that's also important. And I can't tell you who she was with because spoilers. But anyway, I would recommend the series. I don't think it's my favorite fantasy series out there, but it's definitely not a bad one. So if you're up for something that's different, you know, give it a try. The next book I'm going to talk about is one I absolutely hated. I finished it today. It is Tender as the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And it is the story of Dick Driver and his wife Nicole, loosely based on the story of F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife. She had a funny name, can't remember what it was now. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, the best part of the book was the fact that the guy's name was Dick, because he was a dick. But I'm being possibly a bit shallow with regards to this. But anyway, so it's supposed to be a love story, but it's not. You start off meeting Rosemary, who is an 18-year-old actress. Very young in the world, very young in life, and she falls for Dick, and in a way Nicole. She likes the two of them and the idea of them, but she falls for Dick, and this obviously has a negative impact on Dick and Nicole's relationship. And then you go back in time and you learn how Dick met Nicole, and that he was a psychiatrist and she was a mental patient, and yeah, he was a bit of a doctor, and then they got together. And you see that part of the story was actually the most interesting, with Nicole and the letters that she wrote to him and things like that. But then everything starts going downhill as Dick resorts more to the bottle, as he's finding life horribly unsatisfying, until she ends up leaving him. Wow, was that a spoiler? I'm sorry. Anybody who thought that this was going to end differently didn't read the first part very well. But anyway, you know, that wasn't the problem with it. It's that so much of this felt so drawn out. And in hindsight, I can see why he did things. It's like while I was reading the story, I wondered why the hell did I have to sit through Rosemary's point of view on this couple for the first quarter of this book. I mean, what's the point? It's not about Rosemary, it's about Dick and Nicole. But then you can see how people's view on Dick changes, because when you see Dick through her eyes, wow, he seems magnificent, glorious, Herculean almost, as far as, you know, hero worship status goes, until you get to see him later and you realize that he is not the man who he was. But it was painful to read. There are elements of the prose that was pretty, beautiful, but that's not enough to actually keep one going. And so much of it just felt unnecessary. Like the friend, oh, I can't remember his name anymore. I took over a month to read this thing. Who died. They never tied up any of those loose ends or anything of the sort. It was just there. The other thing with this is that a lot of the ideas are outdated. And I would just like to read a little part here to you. So this is with Rosemary, by the way, and Dick had taken her out to go and see the trenches from World War I. And he says here, they came out to the neat restored trench and faced a memorial to the Newfoundland dead. Reading the inscription, Rosemary burst into sudden tears. Like most women, she liked to be told how she should feel, and she liked Dick's telling her which things were ludicrous and which things were sad. But most of all, she wanted him to know how she loved him, now that the fact was upsetting everything, now that she was walking over the battlefield in a thrilling dream. Yeah, I wasn't very much a fan of stuff like that. It really got on my nerves, and I know that this is, you know, written in a day and age where that kind of thinking was normal, but it doesn't really translate well to today. People might have thought that, just like the view on the mental patients. You know, there was so much generalizing in this, and it doesn't transfer well to today's day and age where we are supposedly more enlightened. The next book I want to talk about is Pygmalion by Bernard Shaw. I got this a couple of years ago when I was still working at my last school, and I needed dramas to do with the kids in the lower grades, and I picked this one up because one of the nice things with having a movie version is that for kids who benefit from visual stimulation, it can help. But yeah, so this is the story, in case you don't know, of Eliza Doolittle, the flower girl who is taught how to speak like the Queen by Henry Higgins, and he was Captain Pickering, Colonel Pickering, and basically it's a bet between Higgins and Pickering, and Eliza is the guinea pig in the middle, or the test subject, and of course they succeed, and it's got less in it than the TV show, than the movie, but it's got other things that are interesting. Like Higgins comes across a little bit more as a self-centered dick. We'll just go with that word for this video. But what did make this story interesting is that Bernard Shaw did not like how everybody assumed that this was going to be a happily ever after kind of a story. And right at the back, you have this narrative piece that goes for quite some time, where he dispels every thought that anybody might have had that this was going to have, and they lived happily ever after type of an ending. And that ending I thought was very interesting. It's very abrupt. I mean, he doesn't go into, it's not there to be a part of the story, it's there just to fill you in on everything that happened. But it was interesting, and I liked the spin on it. Then we get to one of the things that I really enjoyed reading. So I have, and I'm going to show them all at once. So I've got Steelheart, I have Firefight, and I have Calamity by Brandon Sanderson. There's also Mitosis, which I don't have in physical copy, but I found online and I read as well. And that is the Reckoner series by Brandon Sanderson. It is a YA series which works on the principle that there was, okay, I'm going to go with the book one synopsis because I don't want to spoil anything. So a comet ends up in Earth's atmosphere and it gives some humans superpowers, but it seems to corrupt them because there is no good superhuman. And in this story you meet David, and right in the first chapter, actually it's the prologue even, of Steelheart, you are with David as an 8-year-old in the bank where his father was coming groveling pretty much for a loan. And one of these epics, these humans with superpowers, comes in and he is killing people. Hell, he even kills the baby in the mother's arms and leaves the mother alive. You know, it's that kind of gross, deliberate, malicious behavior. And yeah, David's father tries to save them and he shoots this epic and injures Steelheart, and Steelheart is supposed to be invincible, and obviously David's father ends up being killed along with everybody else in the bank except for David. He manages to escape, and he has felt guilty ever since because he felt he was a coward. He should have done something. I mean, what 8-year-old could really have done anything? But he is now 16, 17, and or 18 even, can't remember, somewhere around there. And he has to, well, he has been studying these epics his entire life. And now he finally gets a chance to get involved in killing them. And it was a very gripping story. It was fun, it was light-hearted. As I think I said, it was marketed for a YA audience, and although it does have romance in it, it doesn't have all those cliches in it that I have come to hate in YA novels. So I thought that was nice. He does keep it light-hearted, which is what I needed, so that was great. But maybe adults would find it a little frustrating because some things are made a joke of, which could have been very dark and serious. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, I think if you're up for some light reading in the sci-fi, fantasy genre, then give it a go. It's not a bad read. It's entertaining and it's gripping and it's finished, which is also nice because there's nothing worse than being stuck in another, or in the middle of another series that may or may not at one point in time come to an end. The next book I'm going to talk about is Coconut by Kopano Matlwa. Now she is a South African writer, and this story is set post-apartheid. So before I can tell you what the story is about, let me tell you what a coconut is. A coconut is a derogatory term used by black people to black people, meaning that they might be black on the outside but they're white on the inside. And this story is really looking at the struggle that people are facing, trying to find their place as black South Africans in this new world. And it's done in two parts. You follow two girls. It gives you a snapshot of not even a complete day in their lives. So you've got the present day that is going on, and then in italics you have flashbacks to random bits in the past in their lives. And you have to put together the jigsaw puzzle as you are given the pieces. And the first girl you follow is Ifilwe, and she is from an extremely wealthy black family. Her father is some executive. They have a massive house. She goes to an IEB school, which here means that she goes to a private school. They are usually extremely posh. School fees through the roof because there's no government subsidy whatsoever. Standard of education is usually extremely high. And when you look at Ifilwe and you see how she has lost the connection to her culture. She doesn't know how to speak, wasn't Sesotho, was it Swane? There are 11 official languages here. Excuse me for being a bit confused here. But anyway, she's forgot, she doesn't know how, she never learned how to speak her own language. She doesn't know the normal traditional greetings, or at least at the right level of respect to people who are older than you. She doesn't understand why they needed to go to the funeral when they didn't know the person who had died. There's all of this that's put together. And then you get to Fikile, who is a waitress, and she has completely different upbringing to Afilwe. She comes from a very poor family. She has no parental support. She'd been abused as a child. And she is basically trying to be white. When she was at school, she said that when she grew up, she wanted to be white. And it's a very interesting look at new struggles, because I think, actually, you know what, let the book say it for me. At the end, and I'm not really spoiling anything because it's just an idea to put this message across, you meet a man on a train with his daughter, a black man, and he's talking about how he's seeing her in primary school, and she is playing with all these white children and whatnot. And he says, yeah, standing at the edge of that playground, I watched the little spots of amber and auburn become less of what Africa dreamed of and more of what Europe thought we ought to be. Standing at the edge of that playground, I saw tiny pieces of America born on African soil. I saw a dark-skinned people refusing to be associated with the red soil, the mud huts, and the glistening stone beads that they once loved. And he also goes on to talk about how the fact that they have a beautiful language that they're not learning and things like that. And it's a very interesting view on Africa that I had not really thought of before, because it's not an issue that I deal with in my own life. So I found it very enlightening. And although the book still missed something for me, I don't know what. I can't put my finger on it, because I think with the structure that she had, giving it as just a snapshot of it's the same day actually, of Afilwe and Fikile. You just get a snapshot, so there's no development of character, and I think maybe that is what I was looking for, was for them to actually come to some realization of something. But obviously that doesn't happen in half a day, so I don't think that my expectation would ever have been met, and if she did strive for that, then it would have been a different book altogether. But I did get a lot out of it as a white South African reading it, so that was good. And then the last book that I read was Hot Milk by Deborah Levy, and yeah, she's also born in South Africa. So this story follows a girl, Sophia, and her mother, Rose. Sophia was doing her PhD in anthropology when she gets taken out. Well, she abandons it to come home and care for her mother, who has this strange illness where sometimes she is paralyzed in her legs and sometimes she isn't. And no doctor knows what is going on, so they end up going to Spain to see an expert. And it's a very interesting story on a mother-daughter relationship where the roles are swapped. The daughter has become the caregiver, and the mother is the impossible to satisfy child/patient. And there's a lot of symbolism in this, like the Medusa jellyfish, and one kind of wonders if Sophia's constant swimming escapades that resulted in her being stung was symbolic of the fact that she kept going back to her mother, who kept stinging her. I mean, she couldn't give her water that her mother was satisfied with. How do you screw up water? And obviously that was done deliberately, because you can't screw up water. But anyway, it was an interesting story. It looked at selflessness, selfishness, certain mental health issues perhaps as well, and the burden I think that women carry throughout life. It was an interesting story, and I really did enjoy it, but that was because I've seen this, let's put it that way, I've seen this unhealthy relationship between mother and daughter. I haven't experienced it myself personally, but that's because my mother's awesome. My mother wasn't as blessed. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there. But if you don't mind a meandering story with a lot of symbolism and a lot of women and a lot of messed up people, then it's a book that maybe you should consider reading. I know that this one seems to either be a love it or a hate it read, one they call a Marmite book, but I fell in the I liked it category, but then I like Marmite too, so there we go. Anyway, I know that I have been tagged in a ton of videos, and I will be putting them together this week with luck, because, ta-da, I have done the worst of the marking. All those essays are finished. I have marked over 200 essays, aren't you proud? And I am now mostly free, because from now on everything is, in comparison, short answers. So with luck my life will resort to something that goes back to being recreational. And then after that it's the holidays, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to them, because I really am. Anyway, I hope it won't be that long before you see me again. It shouldn't be. If it is, something's happened, I promise. It's not a choice. I'll see you around. Bye.